Okay, I think we will get started. I think people are still going to be coming in, but I want to welcome you all. We have a great number of people from around the world here today. So thank you all for joining us from far and wide, to our guests and our panelists. Just as a note, you should have seen we are recording this session and live streaming it. And it will also be available, so it'll be available later, but just make sure to keep yourselves muted. I am Polly Byers, and I am the Executive Director of the Karuna Center for Peacebuilding. And we are extremely honored to host this session with colleagues from Combatants for Peace and Healing Across the Divides. And I am honestly humbled to be in the presence of such amazing peace builders and deeply grateful for their time today. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of the panelists, their organizations, and Karuna, and then turn to them to ask them to really fully introduce themselves, to tell their stories about how they came to be doing their work. And I also do want to thank our colleagues at the organization American Friends of Combatants for Peace, who so kindly helped us with this event. After that bit, we'll have a discussion about their work and hear their perspectives on the current situation before leaving the last half an hour for you to ask questions. And I have no doubt there will be quite a few. So for your questions, please type them into the chat, ideally with your name and where you're from. And we'll try to get to as many as possible. You know, if possible, we may try to ask a few of you to ask it directly and unmute, but I think there are going to be a lot of questions, so we may consolidate them to make it manageable for the panelists. And also, please feel free to put in the chat just reactions, feelings, opinions. I think it's just interesting to hear what's on people's minds. So feel free to put that in the chat. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. Many of you know Karuna, but many of you may not. But this is our Karuna Center for Peacebuilding's 30th anniversary this year. Karuna has worked in over 20 countries, beginning in 1994, post-genocide in Bosnia. Karuna works in a range of ways, both on the prevention side to prevent conflict and also to help people heal from the trauma of war and to support reconciliation. The use of dialogue has been central to Karuna's work, along with other approaches. I also will note that more recently, we are now working in the US with schools actually in this area of Western Massachusetts to prevent violence. Karuna has been involved with Palestinians and Israelis off and on since the late 1990s. Karuna's founder, Paula Green, who is an amazing person, and peace builder. She first worked with the very impressive organization Combatants for Peace, who you're going to hear from today. You're going to hear from Sulaiman Khatib, who was one of the co-founders, as well as Iris Gur, who is their Israeli community director. And as brief background, for those of you who do not know Combatants for Peace, it was founded in 2006. It is a binational organization and grassroots movement of Israelis and Palestinians who work together to end the occupation, to bring peace, equality, and freedom to their homeland, and are committed to joint nonviolence using civil resistance, education, and other creative means of activism. So as part of our 30th year celebration, we wanted to highlight the impressive work of CFP, but also the important role that local organizations like Healing Across the Divides, which is led by Norbert Goldfield, who is also with us today, can play. Like Karuna, Healing Across the Divides is based here in Western Massachusetts and is doing very important work, not only in providing medical assistance to marginalized communities in Israel and the occupied territories, but also trying to foster mutual understanding and connection. Given Karuna's work over the 3 decades, focused on building bridges and combating dehumanization, we honestly could think of no better way to honor the power and courage of peace builders than to highlight the work of these organizations in this extremely challenging time, particularly since the October 7th attack. I think everybody is more than well aware the news of the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian crisis and the dire humanitarian situation in the occupied territory since October 7th has dominated the news globally and elicited pretty intense engagement of communities across the US and around the globe. college campuses being the most visible, which in some cases have been fostering divisions and violence. So in this extremely challenging context, we are fortunate to hear the perspectives from our panelists who are living and working through it, helping us to understand the role of peace builders in the current crisis. We have much to learn. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them. I think we'll start with Sulaiman Khatib, who is the co-founder of Combatants for Peace and who spent 15 and a half years in an Israeli prison, I think starting at the age of 14. Iris Gur, who is an educator and has been principal of an Israeli public school for over 30 years and is now CFP's Israeli community director, and Norbert Goldfield, founder of Healing Across the Divide. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them, maybe start with Suli and then go to Iris and then Norbert, if that's okay.
Thank you, Boli. Thank you for having us. And it's really an honor for us to reconnect with the Corona Center. I personally know Paula. Try to remember like years ago and been in her house. And also since like early years of Combatants for Peace, actually, we have a very strong partnership and cooperation with Corona Center, and Paula as working with the Combatants for Peace in the land. She was here. So thank you for bringing her spirit back to us. And her message is really needed now more than ever. Speaking from the madness and the atrocities that happening right now while speaking in the land here. Yeah, and especially now, like we spoke before, that crossing across the divide, bridging, is almost 20 years. Dr. Norbert told us, and actually Combatants for Peace is similar. We start talking about the anniversary of establishing Combatants for Peace, which is formally, we announced it like in 2006, but this is also important to mention the foundation of the movement. We had around 2 years of secret meetings, 2004, end of 2004 and through 2005, to establish like a connection, the trust, especially when we spoke about ex-combatants. And that was the context during the second Intifada. So if you ask me, like 20 years ago, I didn't really imagine, maybe I did actually. So to imagine and have a dream that this kind of a community across the divide from different sides, coming from different narratives and different stories and trauma and like a personal engagement in the struggle here. It's not obvious to become friends, to say, or partners. This takes a long time to build the trust. It's really important. And maybe this is also a reminder for all of us at this moment where darkness is really around us everywhere. As they say, like no doubt for a few people that can really, the dream can become true. And I really personally don't believe that dreams that doesn't have a possibility of practical steps to make it happen. And that's the vision we feel connected to. Yes, the occupation is still in the place, the conflict is still here. But I think over the last 20 years, it's hard to speak about it in a few seconds, and also want to give the microphone to my friends here to speak. I just want to mention maybe from my background, I spent 10 years and 5 months in jail. Because you said 15 years. I was sentenced to 15 years. Because I became 15 when I was arrested I was 14 and a half, and then I became 15. So after the investigation time and so on, I was in the military court. Became 15, so I was sentenced 15 years. So my background is totally connected to the struggle here that I started my activism when I was a child almost. I come from an activist family. Yeah, during jail time, I didn't change. That's maybe people will ask, like, how did you change from So I was not a bad guy, I became a good guy. So I just want to make this clear. It was not like a violent guy, I became non-violent guy, because we will have questions later on about October 7 and our war in Gaza. It's really ongoing work. I just want to say this is a long journey. The transformation is really a long journey for me. It's not a reaction to something or just a response. And obviously, through jail time with practicing nonviolence, specifically food hunger strikes. We done this so many times in jail. When I was 15, we had a food hunger strike for 16 days. Sometimes we have 17 days or 10 days. Means we don't eat. We just drink water and salt. That's how we survive. And basically, the need for these hunger strikes is actually to improve the daily life in jail. And I'm just speaking about it because that's how I learn about nonviolence, like practically through my stomach, through our stomachs. And we used to say the battle of the stomach succeed in front of the big power. Because before that, for me to struggle for my liberation and freedom was through violence and my body. And it's always around the body. And then in jail, it's through the stomach and through the time and changes and seeing the possibilities of our peoples and the common ground between our peoples, both with the difference of the power dynamic, obviously, and the oppressed system and all of this. For me, nonviolence became ideology, and also like finding partners in what we call the other side and turning the other into a friend. This is, for me, the mission in life, to bring our peoples together through different ways, strategies of coming together. And then in big part for me was starting together with Combatants for Peace, like with the founders. This is I'm honored to be part of this. Even though this is a very controversial, as you know, I live in West Bank, in Ramallah, and Bethlehem. That's where I'm speaking from now, in Bethlehem. And it's not easy for the majority of the population, both sides, to imagine something else. Yeah, to dream of something else, because people think our conflict is complicated, is different than other conflict, and yeah, God's hand involved in this, and this is we can't do anything with it, and the only way by force or us or them, this language. And I think a lot of people are still in the us or them. And for me, us and them and us together are really connected, and I don't see any way out of this without the liberation of the oppressed and the oppressors. And of course, I come from this experience, and that maybe allow me also to speak publicly about this. I use our stories as we share, and Iris will speak, and that's how we learn in Combatants for Peace, to share our personal stories and the narrative. Yeah, and I'm really glad and excited to this session and to hear my colleagues also and to reconnect, because this is the time for coalition, and it's a global struggle. It's not necessarily even about Gaza, because while we're speaking, I can't not highlight what's happening in Gaza right now, which is a lot maybe in the media, but also in West Bank, where I live, like settler violence. The radicals in all sides are taking over the public opinion, and they are leading. And we know the hero thing is the fighter. That's really a big question. And we try through our peace activism and through our community that includes Israelis, Palestinian, and others, to create, I wouldn't call it alternative, a modeling for partners for the future, rather than stuck in the traumatic past. Okay, I will stop here, I think. I turn the microphone to one of you. Can you run the show, actually, Bully, so I don't...
Yes, no, thank you, Simon. I will hand the microphone. Thank you for that. You touched on a lot of things that I know people will want to talk about, but thank you. That was wonderful. Iris, let's hand the microphone to you, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I want to connect to Sulaiman about the transformation. I think this is the the narrative of Combatants for Peace, and this is the main thing that not only builds Combatants for Peace, but this is one of the reasons it's staying so long, almost 20 years now. So my name is Iris Gur, and I was born and raised in a small city called Netanya in Israel. I would say to a Zionist family. And when I say Zionist, I know it means different things to different people. So I will say what was it to me then? When I was a child and even young woman, it was like Israel is the only land for the Jewish people. It's a small land, small country, tiny, surrounded by enemies. They want to throw us to the sea. We need to defend ourselves, etc., etc. You know all the story. And this was the story that this was my narrative. This was the story that I was like educated, grew up with. My mother was a refugee after she came to Israel with her family after the Holocaust. So all these stories and the narrative that I'm sure everybody knows about, this was my story. I never in my life had any connection with Palestinian people, even though Netanya is only, I think, 14 kilometers far from a Palestinian city named Tulkarem, which is east to Netanya. And I think also my kids, I have 3 kids, and none of us met any Palestinian during our life. In Israel, we also have Arabs with identity, Israel ID. And I worked with them, I saw them, but I didn't think about them as Palestinians, and I didn't see the connection. When I look back, I know something happened during the time which was like underneath, changing my opinions. But it's as Sulaiman said, it's a long process. But the main thing that I want to say that you can live your whole life in Israel without knowing about Palestinians, about knowing about occupation, which was for me was not exist. Even the word occupation wasn't something that I used to say or even could pronounce. So what happened? You need a trigger. My young daughter, when she was 17 and a half, she came to me and said that she refused to go to serve the army. And my first reaction was like yelling at her, how dare you? Everyone is going to serve the army, it's the law. Your grandfather, my father, was an army officer. Brothers went to the army. And I will like make it short, I decided to go with her to respect her opinion. This was like, you say, I'm an educator. All my life, I educate young people, my children and my pupils to have their own opinion and to ask questions and not to follow like what they are saying to do. And I started the process with her, and it ended in 4 months in military prison. She was sent to a military prison for 4 months because she refused. It's called a conscience refuser, and she refused to do the military service. This is her, and I must say that one of her trigger was that the first time she met a Palestinian girl was when she went to learn abroad, not in Israel. She went to learn high school in an international school, and then she met a Palestinian girl. As I said before, it's amazing to think about it, that you have to go so far away to meet someone that lives 14 kilometers east from you. But what had happened to me that I started to ask questions. And I started to learn and to search. And I went to tours also with Combatants for Peace. And I joined the movement Women Wage Peace, and I went to tours with Breaking the Silent, and every organization that did something, I went to see. And what happened that I saw the reality for the first time in my life. I saw the darkness. I saw the evil. I saw the crimes. I saw how is it to live under occupation and what is really going on. And when you see it, you can't go back. It's impossible to go back to your old life. It's impossible to keep silent, to ignore. And so I became what you say, human rights activist or peace activist. And I joined Combatants for Peace because I understand that the only way to change something in our region is working together. And Combatants for Peace is a binational movement, which is Palestinian and Israelis working together and knowing each other and see each other like in the same level. I think this is the reason that I choose Combatants for Peace. And as I said at the beginning, this narrative of transformation, which I believe each of us needs to do. And it will start inside each one of us, this transformation. And for the end, as I said before, you can live your whole life in Israel without meeting a Palestinian person. And then was when I was 52, and I met with the Women Wage Peace. I met a colleague, English teacher from Hebron, Khalil, and she became my best friend, like a family. And the two families and the children, everyone knows each other. So this, like, to end my story, it's not only that I work with Palestinians and I know Palestinians. For me, this friend, my friend Lama, she's more than a sister. So I think this is the key. You have to know each other. We had so many, like, brainwashed, so many walls. I can continue to speak forever, so you must stop me. But I think this is the key. To understand this, as Sully said, on the other side of the fence, these are people, same as us. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Iris. That was incredible. And clearly you are a living testament to the narrative of transformation. I mean, it's a pretty powerful, and I think it's pretty powerful for people here, those of us around the world listening to it, that, but it, you can be living that close and have to go abroad to actually meet a Palestinian and understand the reality. So thank you for that. Norbert, we will hand the microphone to you.
Thank you so much to all of you, to both of you, for those very moving words. I think my story is fundamentally different, which is to say, I'm an American, not born in the United States. I was born in Italy, the child of Holocaust survivors. I was in Israel in 1967 for the first time to meet with the family in Israel who was left over. In 1980, shortly after I finished my medical training, I'm an internist. I still see patients as an internal medicine doctor. I worked at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. In 1996, I came with my family to introduce the family to our Israeli family. And then I started working as a clinician, not just in Israel as a researcher, but also in the West Bank as a clinician. And I worked with an organization that certainly Sulaiman knows of, an organization headed by Mustafa Barghouti, and I've known Mustafa for many years. And so I saw patients at an office that was in a village that I could get to by bus. This was in 1996, so there was no wall at that time, and it would take about half an hour. And of course, now it's a completely different story. And at that point, I started to think about, what is it that American can do with respect to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, now war, that's going on. What I felt is that I've started organizations before, and I've worked as part of larger organizations, and went through a variety of options, and in essence decided, after a study tour of an Israeli and Palestinian physician that Physicians for Human Rights organized in 2004. People were very interested in 2004. There were several hundred people who came to hear their talk at the Harvard School of Public Health. We had very large audiences. We couldn't do that today. We could not do that today. That's how the situation has deteriorated. But in 2004, that's when I felt it was the right time to start this organization called Healing Across the Divides, the mission of which has remained exactly the same. And what we do is we fund and provide technical advice to community groups in both Israel and the West Bank, and to some extent in Gaza, to measurably improve the health of Palestinians and Israelis through community-based interventions. Currently, we fund about 10 groups. We bring the groups together when they desire, and partly we'll discuss this later, but the reality is we can't bring the groups together on both Israelis and Palestinians today. Palestinian groups we bring together in the West Bank, Israeli groups we bring together in the West, in Israel, and that's possible. It's simply not possible to bring them together otherwise. We've been in existence for 20 years. And this year is our 20th anniversary. We had an event, in fact, in Northampton, Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts, with over 100 people there, together with our congressman, who's been an active supporter. I also had the good fortune, and then I'll stop, of knowing Paula Green for years. I used to teach at UMass, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and she would give a lecture in the course that I taught every year. We would get together for a coffee, and each of us in our own way, and all of us that are in this, both speakers and in the audience, we're trying to find our own way under very challenging circumstances. But I want to make one thing clear, and it's very clear from both speakers: we will not give up. We will not give up. The situation has certainly deteriorated, but we will not give up. I can say, and we will discuss this a little bit more later, that the grantees, and I was in the West Bank and in Israel in March, meeting with grantees. These grantees don't give up. They're actually redoubling their efforts. So I look forward to the conversation, Polly, and thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be with colleagues from Combatants for Peace. One of the members of our board of directors, Aziz Abu Sara, is also one of the founders of Combatants for Peace. And thank you, Polly, again. Pleasure to meet you both, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Norbert. I am so glad you could join us, and it's really great to hear, about your work and how you got involved, because there are a lot of organizations. I mean, Karuna, obviously, but there's a lot of organizations that are based in the US, based in other places around the world, who are doing work. And I think that's one of the things will be interesting to talk more about the role of of outsiders, so to speak, because obviously there are, benefits and also risks. So I will be interested to sort of dive into that a little bit. So thank you all for those beautiful, powerful introductions of yourselves and your work. I want to, for the first question, I do not want to overly focus. I mean, as Suli said, this is not just about, this has been a long journey, obviously, since October 7th. It's a different phase, but I am curious. You've all emphasized, Reese, all of you, on, it's about knowing the other and partnership and the critical, Combatants for Peace. What is it? It's a partnership. So I'm wondering partly how October 7th has changed your work, what partnership looks like, has looked like, what it looks like in the current context, what it looks like now. Whether the challenges are different, but maybe if you could all, this is a discussion, sort of talk to that a little bit of what that looks like, how it looks different. So I'll open the floor. So just jump in. Sulaiman.
Okay, I will start, and Suli.
Thanks.
I want to say that October 7 was a shock, so we cannot ignore it. And for me, the world before October 7 and after October 7, it's not the same. It's like the earth was shaking at October 7, but then came the 8 and the 9 and 9 months. So we have it's a long time. But to answer your questions, I will say the truth that for a lot of peace activists in Israel, the October 7 was a change point for some of us. Some of our friends and even our activists asked to step back for a while and couldn't come. And I will share about myself that I think it was a few days or the day after, I don't remember. It's very confusing, those days. And I have a friend in Combatants for Peace, my calling in Ramallah, Sahel. And we had a Zoom meeting like as usual. And I started by saying, I hate you all, which is something that, I don't know what happened to me. But Sahel was amazing, and he held me. No, that's not happened. This is fake. This is true. But we talked about it. This is what's important. We talked about it. And then we had Zoom meeting with the group inside, and Israelis alone, and Palestinians alone. And then together, by national group meeting, we talked about everything. And I think it was, I don't remember fully, I think it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or I don't remember, but it was not very far after the October 7th that we met in Bejala, in the office, in the Palestinian office in Bejala. We met face to face, and we talked about everything, even the painful, it was very painful to hear that some of my friends in the Palestinian side don't believe about things that happened at the October 7, or some of the friends in the Israeli side are going to the army because they feel they have to protect Israel, which is something that is not by the narrative of Combatants for Peace. So they can't be a normal partner. It's difficult. It was very difficult. But I must say that I'm proud with our movement. I'm so proud to be part of Combatants for Peace because we got through the pain. We walked through the pain together, holding each other, talking open about everything. And I had after a few days, I asked myself, so what is what is my role now as a peace activist? What is my role now in this world after what is going on? What is the role of Combatants for Peace? And I've got like a picture that I'm holding a little flame, and it's a flame of hope. And this is our main goal now. This is our duty. We need, peace activists must hold this flame of hope, because one day more and more people will want a light from this flame of hope. And I'm very proud to say that we are working together, and more than before even. So this is what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Iris. Sully, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so yeah, just to add to what Iris expressed and spoke about. So of course, like, look, over the last 20 years, we successfully built a very strong foundation and a connection, interpersonal, and as organization, as a movement, we passed through many other like challenges, crises over the years. So this is not the first time we facing this kind of challenge, but of course this is like a huge. This was like a historical and still a historical challenge. It's like a earthquake. It's much bigger than we passed together ever before. With that said, I just maybe want to share a few points from my experience from October, as Iris said, October 7 and then October 8, October 9, until where we are right now. So I think it's really, I want to say this, two things. One, it's really easy to speak about, like dialogue and in comfort times, about values of love and forgiveness and togetherness and friendship even. And in our comfort times, the real thing is when it's not comfortable. And these are one of those times that things are not comfortable for none of us. We personally has lost people in October 7 and since then in Gaza. Like we have friends that were like were killed by the attack of Hamas, October 7. There were peace activists that was killed. We had some Israeli members that they have friends that were killed or kidnapped. And we have people in Combatants for Peace that are from Gaza. Specifically Ahmad Hilu, that he's a long committed activist in Combatants for Peace over more than 15 years, that his family lives in Gaza, and Fatima, that her family lives in Gaza and she lives illegally in Bethlehem. She's married and living here because she can't, this is a pre-October 7, she can't marry other Palestinian and come live here. So she did it like she's doing it illegally. But all her family in Gaza, and since then, like a lot of their families and relatives were killed or injured and their houses demolished, destroyed. So we're speaking about a really personal experiences. It's not like far away from us. And there is a lot of, fear and emotions, as Iris mentioned. I think I'm also feeling like when I look back now and right now, I feel proud that Combatants for Peace, one of the only joint spaces groups that stayed together. Even if we lost one person here or there, but I honestly don't expect everybody to have the same ability. In times of crisis, people go back to their tribe, to the fear, to the trauma, obviously. And it's still happening, like was speaking also in West Bank, the settler violence is growing like 10 times than before or more even. So this is the real time for us as activists to really stand up and speak out and work part of the changes, which I hope to shift this atrocities, this tragedies that happening right now while we're speaking, to use it as opportunity between to practice for like a historical change, a historical shift I believe like the cooperation and the alliances among different groups is getting bigger than before. Because usually in these our circles, sometimes unfortunately, the conflict is not just outside, out there with the system, which is the main issue. Because we need that system change, and the system keep the separation and the different rights for different groups and so on. But also within the different groups, the peace groups, there are also challenges that we can speak about it honestly. Donors, ego, this and that agenda. I think this is, for me, is the main problem that we have to overcome and work in alliances. Without working alliances, all the civil society that you spoke about, Bole, is not going to make change. If each group, I don't believe Combatants for Peace, even it's our own organization that can make change alone. So that's why we're working to create a coalition of different groups, locals and globally, that agree on certain values for collective liberation. And that's where we are right now. And this is a big change from managing the conflict, what happened October 7, and now it shows managing the conflict is not gonna work. It's not working. Second thing, it's proven our point, which we spoke about it since 20 years, that there is no military solution for our cause. And this is our personal experience. And actually, so many people are joining us now and or speaking to us from all sides, saying the same. Palestinians are here, they're not gonna leave no matter what. And Israelis are here, that's it. We have to find a way to live next to each other.
So I would have three comments. Number one, after October 7th, it revalidated even more strongly the fact that the United States almost never plays a positive role. And that revalidated one of the reasons why I started Healing Across the Divides, which leads to my second point, which I believe that with respect to the Israeli-Palestinian war, is that it's Israelis and Palestinians who will make the peace. Certainly the Americans will not play a positive role. We already know that. It's bad enough as it is. If Trump gets elected, there's no question that there will be an attempt to annex the West Bank and resettle Gaza. So my first point is that the United States never plays a positive role. My second point is the fact that the Israelis and Palestinians will be the ones who will make the peace. I'm very appreciative of both the board, which of Healing Across Divides, which is composed of Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, Jews, and Christians. They took a stance very early on for a ceasefire and release of the hostages and release of prisoners and so forth. We sent it to every member of Congress. We sent it to the White House. We sent it to Vice President Harris. And of course, not surprisingly, we received 2 responses, neither of which were of any interest whatsoever. So I believe as a second point that it will, it's Israelis and Palestinians. I'm pleased with our board. I'm also very pleased, just like I hear these wonderful stories of Combatants for Peace really staying together. I'm pleased that our Israeli representative and our Palestinian representative are not only working together, not only communicating with each other, but really actively engaged with each other, which is not a given these days. It is not a given. And then lastly, with respect to the programs that the community groups that we're funding, as I already indicated, these programs are working even more actively. They know how important it is. And what it is, it's just like everybody. You hear from everybody that's spoken this thus far. People just want to live. They want to have a family. They want to have the basics of life. And you see these grantees. I was in refugee camps in Bethlehem and in Ramallah. Unfortunately, I could not go to Nablus and Jenin, where we have other initiatives. And when I was in the same in the southern Israel and in Jerusalem, where we're funding a project, for example, a community group that's working on reproductive rights, where Jewish women are working together with Palestinian women. they are redoubling the efforts. Initially, there were issues, but they are redoubling out the efforts. So that's what's happened after October 7th, showing again that the United States almost never plays a positive role. Number two, that this is going to be Israelis and Palestinians who will decide to do this together, and healing across the divides in a very, 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 and I hope I've emphasized that, modest way will have had a small role to play.
Thank you, Norbert. I want to pick up on sort of some of the themes here of, you know, in a way, the opportunities where people are working together in a way they haven't before. The importance, Sully, that you were pointing of coalitions, that it's not one group or this group or that group, but it really has to be groups working in coalition. And wondering, I mean, I take Norbert's point. The US has not played a positive, constructive role, but wondering how, whether it's the, you know, it's the Karunas, it's the Norberts, there's any myriad of organizations, large and small. And as Julie, I come from this world, so, you know, the egos, the donors, I mean, there are all these communities, everybody's got their interests, everybody's got their projects, like it's just so much to manage. But what your thoughts, recommendations are on roles that outside, I mean, again, I agree, it's Israelis and Palestinians have to work it out, but what role can, I mean, I think a lot of people probably on this call are wondering what can they do, who should they support, what organization. So it's kind of, what can people outside the conflict do to help? And I would highlight, obviously there have been all these protests on college campuses in the US that we've certainly in the US that's, you know, been in the newspapers regularly, but there's a lot of points you all have just brought up, and I'm curious. I mean, the other thing I wanted just to reflect on is the importance of the foundation. I mean, as he said, initially, like, you know, everybody, when a shock of an earthquake of that dimension happens, and it's not the first, you know, people tend to retreat. But you have this foundation of trust, you know, of Combatants for Peace and other organizations that have been working together, Norbert's, et cetera, that you can, you know, come back together, talk through, work through, which is obviously critical. But so not to go on there, but I am wondering again about how your thoughts on how organizations, outside entities can play a constructive role.
Silence.
Maybe that says it all.
No, but Sulaiman and Iris may have some ideas.
Sully, you want to answer? I think you have.
I go after you if it's okay.
I want to see if I understood your question. Like, you're asking what can people do, what organizations like Peacebuilding, like your organization or others,
Yes.
in Israel and outside Israel?
Organizations outside of what kind of role they can play, because there's obviously a lot of, you know, there can be a lot of interference that cannot be helpful, that can be divisive, distracting, etc. So that really is the question of what organizations outside of the conflict, you know, how they can play, what kind of role they can play that in your view would be helpful.
Okay, first of all, I want to say that there is something very important in my opinion, which is that organizations and people outside will not choose a side. Don't choose to be pro-Israel now, don't choose to be pro-Palestine now, because the minute you choose a side, it's not helping us. I say start and talk about the humanity, about the 14 million people that are living between the river and the sea. I see those signs between the river and the sea, etc. and I'm now in Amsterdam, so I know about the demonstration that were here, and this is the time to say thank you for my friends in Amsterdam and Netherlands that are joining this Zoom. I think we should work together, all of us, Israelis, Palestinians, people around the world, any organization, everyone. We need everyone that can help us to speak the same language, which is choose humanity, choose peace. There are 14 million people living between the river and the sea in our region. And we need a political solution, a political agreement that will speak not only about Gaza and not only about Israel and not only the ceasefire now. It's the West Bank, it's Lebanon, it's Syria, it's the whole area. Everything that we will do, it will affect everyone. The north of Israel is burning now, and the south of Lebanon is burning now. People are suffering all over. We are talking now, and this is almost 40 degrees in the Jordan Valley, in the West Bank. And there are people without water there. People are suffering now. And the minute we are speaking, people are without food, without a shelter, everyone. So it's not only what is happening in Gaza. It's like, for me, it's like a genocide, but we'll put it on the side. What is going on now in the whole area, it could be effect also in Greece and in Cyprus, because people are also afraid that someone will attack them also because of what is going in Israel and the Palestinian and the north with Hezbollah. So it's like more than choose one side, more than speak only about ceasefire now. It's more than that. So we should speak in the same language. We choose humanity, we choose compassion, we choose peace and security for everyone, no matter who you are.
Thank you, Iris. Usually I agree with Iris. Maybe with the choosing sides, we are not in the same page exactly. But I got what Iris is trying to say. As a bridge builders, we definitely call for or invite people to have a space for all people from all sides. This is the core of our heart. And of course, like as Iris mentioned, like to choose life. And what we struggle is struggle for life, basically. And wherever we see destruction and death and hunger and the atrocities that happen in the land, it has to be condemned and call for accountability from all sides. That's our moral position. A practical talk, I would say, and like as honest as possible, I think I'm talking now more to the active sides, like to the active circles, to the peace builders. We spoke about coalition buildings. I think I'm seeing recently much more cooperation among the different organizations. I want to highlight the conference that was happening 2 weeks ago, July 1st, that called Time is Now. All the Israeli and some of them Palestinian Israelis and us Combatants for Peace take part in this in cooperation. We couldn't join physically because there is no permits since the war started, and pre the war, I have to say, we're not living equally in our homeland. Like, that's important to mention. So we send the videos of solidarity with our Israeli partners. 7,000 people came. This is really huge. It gave a lot of life, energy to the whole. Even to use the word peace is weird right now. So this gave a lot of power, a lot of energy to the current mainstream option, which is war and darkness and war. I believe people, even in the right wing or any side, can't live with a sword. as Netanyahu and others, like, we can't live with a sword forever. People can't live with hopelessness. That's not nature. That's not a human. I believe also we don't have a choice. Like Dr. Norbert spoke about, hope is optimism is like a choice. I think we don't have the privilege to lose hope. That's to start. I don't have this privilege. Like if I'm not optimistic, I will leave the land and I will go somewhere. But this is where we belong. This is where we born, and the mission is really to transform this place into a much nicer place for everybody. As it is said, like everybody live from the river to the sea, deserve to be liberated, freedom, and no matter which political framework. That's another question. I think for the organizations, we need to really balance our work, the inner work and the outer work. It's very important, so we are not turning to become part of the problem, part of the status quo, and that's happened like post Oslo, honestly, rather than become really part of the solution. And I spoke at the beginning how many people here that born into this conflict can't see beyond the moment, and they think this is forever. And we know this has been said, you guys all work in conflict resolutions. You know, this has been said in Ireland, in Cyprus, in South Africa, everywhere. We are not a unique in that sense. And so you mentioned the students like demonstrations and so on. I honestly, I have to say, like as an activist, as a Palestinian, somehow I also feel like excited, despite the pain, the losses that's happening in Gaza right now and elsewhere. I feel also excited for the awareness, the awakening energy happening in the world. And it's, for me, it's not about Gaza. It's not about Palestinians. I'm very well aware it's about something deeper in many places that people want to see a system change. I believe we should strengthen our solidarity with each other and change the vibe from competition into cooperation. And there's abundance for everybody. And I believe, as some researchers said, Yani, we need like 3% of the society to make the change happen. I don't expect 95% of the population to be activists. If this 3% well cooperated with each other and change the culture of competition, of scarcity, of saviors, and so many other questions and values that we have to work on this, I believe a different world is possible for everybody globally, because this conflict specifically is a mirror for the global system.
Just real briefly, I think that there's no question that with respect to, and actually addressing one of the questions, that October 7th has made a historic change. There's no there's no going back. There's no going back to even if some will do so, even if Trump is elected. There's no going back to believing, as a week before October 7th, the head of the National Security Council in the United States said, there's really no Palestinian issue. That time has come and gone. Okay, we all recognize it. The question is what to do about it, and Combatants for Peace has a critical role to play. And what we can do at Healing Across the Divides is to engage with as many Americans as possible to support community health initiatives. And what's great about community health initiatives in both Israel and the West Bank and Gaza is that healthcare is very political, but you don't ever use the word politics. It's just health. So you're actually going in and talking about politics without ever talking. We're always talking about health and how we're improving health in a community manner. If you improve health in a community manner, you are improving the whole community, also the politics of that community. And we bring the groups together. So that's what we can do. We can engage with as many Americans as we did this past Sunday, with over 100 people in attendance physically. Remember that? Used to get together. And we can do that. And then we can fund and work with groups, bring them together as they desire. We never insist that they get together to improve communities. That's what we can do, and I think that that's realistic. But there's no turning back to before October 7th. That is very clear. That it'll never go back. We may have a very dark time coming up, but there's no question that the Palestinian-Israeli war will not be ignored anymore.
Can I add something?
Please.
Okay. When I said about don't choose a side, I know it's my heart was talking, and my wishful thinking. It was my wishful thinking and my heart. But I listened to Suli and what he said, and I have tears in my eyes now, because I know that these demonstrations with the flags and the kafia, you know, the symbol of the Palestinians, and the demonstrations of the students, even the violence one, it was important. It is important, because as Norbert say, you cannot ignore anymore the situation. You cannot go back. The world cannot go back and ignore Palestinian. Even in Israel, there are a lot of people that before spoke differently, and now they speak like, okay, they are here and we cannot ignore them anymore. It's not majority. It's still not enough amount of people, but it exists. So the Palestinian issue is here on the table. We cannot ignore it anymore. So I'm sad to say it, but it's important. And there is another thing that is a little bit complicated for me, which is the boycott upon the Israeli culture and academic, the university and people. Most of the left side are in the academic. You know, the university and the culture and the artists, most of them in the Israel are from the left. They are peace people. And if you will boycott them, you will not hear this side of the Israeli public. So I have confused with this. It's complicated for me. In one way, I want, yes, shut down Israel. Enough with these terrible crimes that we are doing. I'm ashamed. Stop us, please. Stop us from doing it. But on the other hand, I really want you to hear these amazing people in the academia and in the culture and even in the press. So I have mixed feelings with this one, but I agree with Suli that sometimes we need it.
Yeah, maybe if we have a minute or we finish over time.
Go ahead, Suli. Yeah.
Middle East time, we never committed to exact times. Yeah, thank you, Elise. I just want to mention actually doing a peace work and bridge building is really for me like so far, and that's what hold us in October 7, October 8, 9, until now in Combatants for Peace, for people just to share the experience, is really being truth and really being your full truth, because in some circles and sometimes people tend to shut part of their feelings to make the other one feeling good. I think it's really a time of truth. And that's what happened here. Like, you know, on October 7, we had calls. I had call with the founders of our organization, like very close friends, you know, Chen and Afnet. And, you know, I heard the depression and the angry and the willing to go to the tank again until a couple of hours later. And they heard my heart saying, oh, the first scene, I was happy to see somebody broke the siege in Gaza. And then I went through different feelings, including, you know, like also shame when I saw attacking civilians. I like different parts. The point I'm trying to share in quickly, and that is my wishful thinking for at least for this 3% for the activist circles, is really to be truth and not to cut part of ourselves, even if it's harsh. this honesty allowed trust, allowed love, and it has to be done with love anyway. So we act out of love, not out of fear. And that's what my hope, my dream, my wish, and the vision, that peace will based on love and sharing, not on fear and separation. Because that will be taking us again, as Dr. Norbert mentioned, security solutions. It's not working. We need to build something else here that works. And I heard the controversy about boycotting BART or not boycotting you. This is, of course, very controversial. And the demonstrations at the universities, whatever it carry weight, and how much maybe it make the Israelis feel, as I can feel, I'm not just a Palestinian. Like, I also, I speak Hebrew, I have Israeli friends, and I can feel like how it feel how my mom feel, how my friend in Gaza feels, and how my Israeli friend feel. At the same time, we have the stability, the trust to continue this journey without knowing all the answers. It's also all right.
Thank you all. I mean, you're covering so much, and your honesty is powerful. I mean, I think for everybody listening, I'm you're touching on a lot of we're kind of monitoring the questions. You all are probably looking at some of the questions here, and I think just to your last point, Suli, I mean, there are questions. There was Noga Glucksman, who was an Israeli living in London, wrote earlier basically about how wanting to hear more about, really it's kind of about the work of Combatants for Peace, and how getting away from the us versus them. I mean, going back to the very beginning of the conversation and trying to see see the humanity in each other, of how Israelis and Palestinians, how that can be fostered and supported and amplified more broadly. I mean, we've talked about the 3%, and it does not have to be everybody, but obviously, the more momentum, again, you look at changes in other countries that, whether it's South Africa or North Ireland, a certain momentum. I mean, there's been the opportunity in a way of the crisis coming to the forefront globally. I mean, then not going back, that there seems an opportunity there. But I'm wondering what any three of you would have to say about other positive approaches to trying to form those bridges and bonds and understanding that you all have through your work. Iris, you think of the educational exchanges. I mean, there's programs, one right up here, Friendship for Peace in New Hampshire, where they're bringing Israeli Palestinian students, the Parents Circle, obviously you all know very well, bringing I was just contacted about bringing a group to Massachusetts this fall, trying to educate the public here. But I'm wondering of what kinds of other efforts to sort of amplify the work and the connections. I mean, maybe that's too general, but that's what I'm looking at some of these questions and pulling out of that for you all right now to respond to in any way.
I want to answer about the education. I think, yes, most of it is about education, both sides. I can say, as I was part of the system, and I know what we did, like as teachers, what we taught our children. And I can't see that something will change in the public education system in Israel, and not in the Palestinian side, especially not now. It's getting worse and worse. More rightist and more religious and more extreme. But there are the informal education system, as Combatants for Peace has this freedom school that we have both sides. which is the Palestinian side freedom school and the Israeli side freedom school. And I know this is one of the projects that we have, and we are not the only one. There are a lot of organizations that have projects. And yes, it is important, and it's slow and it's minority, but it is a change. I know for sure that young people between the ages 19 and 30 that are taking part in these seminars and training and tours, it makes the difference, for sure. I have a good friend, which is not in my opinion. We are not the same opinion, but her son heard from me about Combatants for Peace, and without saying nothing to his mother, he went to learn in the Freedom School of Combatants for Peace. And now he is part of Combatants for Peace. He's almost 30 years old, and it changed. But when he learned, he came back home, and now his mother learning more and more. So it's not only the one that are learning, it's the society around you. It's your family, your friends. So it's their impact. And we are not the only one. I know about, I'm sorry to say, but one of the hostages, Naama Levy, she was in a project in the United States when she was, I think, 16 years old. And now she's 20. It was with Hands of Peace. She's hostages in Gaza now. She was a soldier in the 7th of October, and she was taken by Hamas. And I really hope that she will survive and she will release, as I want all the prisoners, both sides will release. So what I wanted to say is that young people that are going abroad to meet Palestinians, it's very good, but it's more important to meet each other in the region, not only abroad, in our region. And yes, we can do it because we, like in our office in Bajala, I know that we host a lot of seminars binational. We are in the sea area, so both Israelis and Palestinians can meet, and we're still doing it, even now.
Thank you. Thanks, Iris. I'm looking, and we are running close to the end of time, but Andrew Sherman asked the question that I think we all wonder about on a lot of topics, about the role of media and reporting, because that's bombarded with news, and it's usually of the violence, and how media can be encouraged. I mean, maybe just whatever views you have, to report more on the work you all are doing. I mean, that's the sort of a global phenomenon. The positives rarely make the news, right? And I don't know if that's something that you feel much, but what your thoughts are on that, on how the media could be help to amplify some of the good work. I mean, it is all about trying to build a movement, to build the connections. And I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that. You can say, feel free to say anything if you have any thoughts.
I'll just say a couple quick things. Number one, that whenever there's violence, there's always going to be greater attention to the violence.
Right.
That's just the human condition. Secondly, there's also no question that the media is interested in these stories. So it's our obligation, both Combatants for Peace and Healing Across the Divides. That's why we all have communications people to try to communicate our stories. So I think that's it's absolutely possible. And then we need everybody, for example, on today's Zoom, and hopefully today's Zoom will have an afterlife. and that the word will get out. So that I think is the situation. Understanding that the human condition will always, at least on the immediacy, highlight violence. That said, I can definitely say that we can definitely make an impact, but we need to have everybody working together, understanding that at least in terms of the United States, that's why we always look at to Israelis and Palestinians. You know, that's the ethos of healing across the divides. But when we look to the United States, there's a very small group of very powerful individuals who are extremely wealthy, who have Republican and Democrat, who have a very major impact. There's no question at the same time that after October 7th, college students and other young people definitely also had an impact. And exactly the contours of that and what its impact is not totally clear, but it's definitely had an impact. And then the groups, the Combatants for Peace and the Healing Across the Divides, and people mentioned other groups, Palestine House for Friendship, et cetera, et cetera. We have to work. It's our responsibility to engage with the media to get them interested in our work. It's our responsibility.
Yep, well said, Norbert. And Annie Rappaport just mentioned here an organization I know they've just grown called Making Peace Visible, and they have a podcast, and it's really trying to uplift peace journalism. So thank you, Annie, for mentioning that. I do want to point out in the chat that everybody, Iris, Sulaiman, Norbert, have put their contact information, and Nicole from American Friends of Combatants of Peace has put the contact information to learn more about CFP. You can go to their website. So there's quite a bit of information here in the chat, and we will bring that together when we make this recording available. I feel like we're probably getting to the end. I'm going to ask one more question that is, that I'll just be interested to hear what you all have to say, and then basically any closing thoughts, from each of you. Bevis Longstreth asked the question that, or made the statement that politics stands in the way of peace. How can one help to bend politics towards peace? We could look at the U.S. here. We can look over in Israel and the occupied territories, but I'm wondering what any of your thoughts would be on that, and anything else you want to sort of end with. So I'll turn it over to you.
Very briefly, peace is a political process. Peace is a political process. So the two cannot be separated. And I also want to be clear, in terms of the work of Healing Across Divides, we do peace building. We are not engaged in the peace process. So the event that was in Tel Aviv a couple of weeks ago, that could be part of the peace process. But we are one step back as an American organization. So peace is a political process. We can contribute to it. We can contribute to it if everyone on this Zoom works with us, and the many organizations that are out there. I right away signed up for Anne Rappaport's organization. But peace is a political process, and we will contribute to it by doing peace building. That's the title of my book, which I'll put in the chat. It's called Peacebuilding Through Women's Health, because, in fact, from our perspective, empowering women in particular is key to the peace process. So that's a longer conversation, but I'll stop there.
But I would like to strongly support that statement, because there's a huge amount of evidence and documentation of that fact, actually, globally. So I just thank you, Norbert, for bringing that up. Iris, Suli, anything you would like to add?
I agree, and thank you, Norbert, about I just wrote it to me that this is a political process, and we need to work towards the peace all over. And for my feeling right now, I feel that we are all hostages by extreme and fascist politics everywhere. It's not only in Israel. And this is the thing that we should work for all over together, to demand from our politics, from our leaders, to be very clear about what they are going to do for peace, for humanity, all over the world. Stop dealing with money and weapons. Without the money and the weapons of the United States, not Israel and not the Palestinian can continue the war. So you can demand your leaders to shut the top and don't send money and don't send weapons all over. So I think this is what we can ask for our politics. We demand for our politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Well said.
Yeah, also agree. Like the peace work is a part of like everything politics. Like if specifically, I mean everywhere, but here, like me and Iris to meet, it need a political decision that I will have a permit. So it's a whole political system, and
Right.
so for some organizations and people, they think, oh, we don't talk about politics, let's just get together, become friends, is not enough to say. That's already, it's beautiful, we support this value, but it's not enough. I think we have to, one, like we spoke, I think all of us, the importance of building alliances among the different groups and be open for different strategy, because when you ask people like what theory of change, there are different theories of change, and I think there are different strategies, and it's all good. Like we don't all have to agree in one way or one savior or one strategy. I think shifting the consciousness of the activists or the change makers to accept and tolerate each other of different opinion, different theory of change is really important. As we spoke, this is the model that we have to bring, the model that when we speak about peace and love and forgiveness, it's all out there in our cultures. You know, we can activate it. We don't need even, you know, when people speak about the UN and the international law and this, we come from like indigenous culture here that has thousands of years of conflict resolution that's needed really to be activated. When we talk about sulha, reconciliation means in our language, and the goodness in this culture here, the localization is really important in our story. And I think since the war, like I think a lot of people are working to build coalitions that based on values. If people agree into the intention and the goals, we can disagree on how to get there. That's totally fine. And I believe it's happening slowly. That gives me really a lot of hope. And you know, the end of the day, the politicians, the problem with the system has to be changed. It's not about removing Netanyahu and having Ben Gvir. It doesn't matter. He just like clear. That's all about Trump, like, right? And so I think we need to like really work to make systematic change, that holistic change, holistic activism that brings all the mental health, the trauma healing, I don't know, the medicine, everything, not just the political agreement of some rules. That's what I believe, and we can like I'm dreaming that this will happen. As they say, we can keep one leg in reality and one leg in the dream.
Suli, I think that is a fabulous sort of last comment for this session. I think you've just encapsulated so much there. I mean, and you know, not least of which or greatest of which is the hope. But you said earlier, it's like I don't have the luxury of giving up hope. I mean, I think there's a lot of people of hand wringing and despair of like, oh, what can we do? And it's like, yeah, well, you don't really have the luxury of that. And sort of building on all the traditions that your cultures have, that so many do around the world, of people working together in conflict resolution. And so, but it is, I mean, you're so right, and so many, all those fronts of it's a system change. It's not just moving one guy here, and we certainly know that in our situation here in the U.S. as well. So with that, I mean, this was an incredibly rich discussion. You know, we are grateful for your time, for your work, and your courage and commitment. And you know, I think you have been, I feel the confident in saying, I think you have probably inspired everybody who is on this call today. So huge thanks to you all, and to everybody listening. I urge you to click on, look at the websites of these organizations and do whatever you can to support this work. So thank you once again, and we look forward to connecting with you all down the line. Thank you all.
And thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.